Before I start to talk about a somewhat disastrous document that our present dear Holy Father issued in 1988, I want to clear up some distinctions with you. One of the major causes of confusion today is a lack of distinctions. People talk and they discuss and they dispute and they fight, and they seem to fight over two different things when usually it's the one and the same thing talked about in two different terms that both are not properly understood. So I want you to be able, as if you have been looking it up in a dictionary, to distinguish between the term of subjective and objective. Those who know my tapes hopefully know those distinctions already, but not everybody does, so I will have to repeat them. When you talk about something in an objective way, you are referring and concentrating to the object, as the Romans would say, res. You're talking about the thing itself. When you pronounce subjective judgment, you're talking about something from a subjective, a personal viewpoint. For example, there can be no discussion that the wine I'm drinking right now is objectively a good wine. I've had gallons of it. I've had probably truckloads of it so far. And I've never had a headache. Never gave me a headache, so it must be a good wine, objectively. However, you might not like it. So that's a subjective judgment. It is objectively a good thing, like objectively onions, garlic, red peppers, and all kinds of things are good for you, but you might not like them, so subjectively you reject something, which is your right to do. You reject something that objectively is good for you. So objectively means actually talking about an object, not about your personal viewpoint on the object. Subjectively means you are referring to your personal viewpoint. And the same thing is true for objective and subjective judgment. If you call somebody a murderer, you might be pronouncing an objective judgment. You say, okay, this guy murdered, who knows, his neighbor. Now he's in jail, and I'm quite glad if he gets fried. But then, subjectively, he might not be a murderer at all. You do not know. Subjectively, he might be a maniac who didn't know what he was doing. Subjectively, it might have been an accident, but the poor guy can't prove it. Objectively, he's a murderer. So, if you cannot distinguish the two, then you're really not fit for a theological discussion, because when we talk, and we will talk about our dear present Holy Father, I will have to pronounce objective judgment. But if any one of you afterwards says that Father Hesse condemned the person of the present Pope, then he's a liar. Because I told you explicitly that this is what I will not do. I refuse any personal judgment whatsoever on anybody. I'm not even saying that Clinton will go to hell. What more do you want? I don't know. The probability speaks for it, but I don't know. I cannot pronounce subjective judgment on either Clinton or her husband. And I will not. Objectively, she's a criminal, a traitor to the country, so is her husband. You have to distinguish the two. Then you have to be able to distinguish the term material and formal. Material is just what it means. It's there. The matter of something is there. But it might not be intentional or declared as such. You can talk, if I was to say to you, after 5 of those pictures, which even for me is a little bit too much, and I was going to tell you the Trinity really has 6 persons. This is quite obviously material heresy. I mean, the heresy is pronounced, it's there. But I guess you will still trust me and say he didn't want to say this. So formally it's not there. It's not formal heresy. But if one of you would say, excuse me, Father, now that I'm sober and all right and listening and attention, will ask me, is it true, Father, that Our Lady was not immaculately conceived? And I will say, I don't care what Vatican I says, definitely she was not. Formal, declared, intentional, sinful, heresy. But if you ask me, is it true that Our Lady was not immaculately conceived, and I don't hear the term not immaculately conceived, or immaculately conceived. I don't hear it well. I think I heard it well, and I say no or yes, and it's the wrong answer, and it's material heresy. I just pronounced something that in itself is heresy, but obviously don't want to do so. And you ask me, what? And I will get the idea. I will realize that you said something obviously in a way that I could not really hear well, and I must have given the wrong answer, and say, excuse me, say again, repeat the question. And then the thing will be cleared up. But you have to understand that sometimes heresy can be there. It can even be repeated heresy. It could be there 50 times over. And yet, because the guy is an imbecile, an ignoramus, or a philosophical pervert, he might not realize this is heresy. He might not want to speak heresy, but at the same time do it all the time. Then we have to talk about the difference between act and potency. That's a term very rarely used in English everyday language, but it is very necessary to understand in today's crisis. You see, when I tell you right now that I'm Pope, you will say, oh, Father Hesse is going off the rocker. And yet I just said the truth. I am Pope. Oh, not right now, not actually. Impossibility. The probability is zilch, but I could be Pope. So, in Thomistic philosophy, you speak about act and potency. In act, I am a man, a priest, a Catholic. In potency, I am father of children, bishop, cardinal, pope, a heretic, all kinds of things. That's in potency. The possibility is there. I could still become one, but I'm not right now. And it is, of course, intrinsically dishonest to say something that is only true in possibility, which means in Latin in potentia, in potency, and not say so. That's dishonest language. And it's crazy language, as you realize the moment I say to you, I am Pope. In conventional English language, I cannot say I am Pope. Only as far as philosophical language is concerned. And this is what you have to understand. When the present Pope says that all men have been saved by Christ on the cross, full stop, period, that's heresy. He should have said in potency, in possibility. When Christ died on the cross, he gave every human being the possibility to be saved. But we know Our Lady showed to the children in Fatima that hell is really crowded. So many did not make it. Many are not saved actually in act. They had the possibility, and for some reason they did not use it. So if you say that Christ on the cross saved everybody, you better add, as far as possibility is concerned, not actually. We do not know, the Church refuses judgment on who is in hell. We don't know that. Church has not even said that Judas Iscariot is in hell. But we know that there are many people in hell. We have had enough privileged saints and apparitions of Our Lady and other things that prove to us that there are many people in hell. We don't know who, but there are. So therefore, the statement that everybody has been saved by Christ on the cross is not only heretical, it's also patently absurd. And there's another distinction that we have to keep, licit and valid. Every time I talk about going to the Novus Ordo Mass or not going to the Novus Ordo Mass, whatever I say, somebody will come up and say, Father Hesse just said it's valid or not valid. Depends on what I said. People leave my lecture and say, you see, again he said, it's valid, it's valid. Or the other way around, whatever their mood is like and their funny brains are like. Licit and valid talk about two different things. Validity means it takes place. The sacrament is confected. It comes about. Licitness means if you're allowed to do it or not. The Russian Orthodox Church, according to the judgment of the Catholic Church, has only valid sacraments. All 7 sacraments are recognized by the Catholic Church as far as the validity is concerned. Needless to say, as the Russian Orthodox Church is in heresy and schism, in heresy because they refuse the papal infallibility, they reject the papal infallibility, and they reject, so that's heresy, and they reject the papal primacy, which makes them schismatics. So obviously, the Russian Orthodox do not celebrate and administer the sacraments licitly. They are not allowed to, but they do it all the same. However, their sacraments are valid. The Anglicans, and Pope Leo XIII judged that infallibly forever, the Anglicans do not even have valid Mass, let alone licit. So you have to understand, licit means allowed, valid means it works or it doesn't work. And an Anglican, so-called Anglican priest, celebrates the weird Anglican liturgy, which is a little bit better than the Novus Ordo, but not much. Nothing happens, period. Nothing happens. When he communicates after, at the end of the service, he eats a cookie and he drinks wine. Not body and blood of our Lord. Nothing happened. So it's invalid. With the Russian Orthodox, it's valid, but it is not licit. It is not allowed. They don't have the right to do that because they're in schism with the Church. These distinctions declared, and I want you to remember that if, whatever I'm going to say, if there's something that you apparently cannot agree with, then I can tell you, either you don't accept the doctrine of the Church or you mistook one of these distinctions, and as the benefit of doubt for you, I would presume that you mistook one of those distinctions.